Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we are diving into a genuinely mind-bending ancient text that completely shatters our modern ideas of right and wrong. We're going to explore a philosophy where breaking the rules isn't just allowed, it might actually be the absolute most righteous thing you can do.
So, let's set the stakes right out of the gate with a wild thought experiment. Would you, personally, accept an eternity of absolute torment just to save a total stranger? It sounds incredibly extreme, I know, but this exact question is basically the beating heart of the philosophy we're decoding today.
Believe it or not, this ethical puzzle actually comes from a 1700-year-old Buddhist scripture. It's been beautifully digitized and preserved in the CBETA electronic Tripitaka collection. It's called the Sutra of the Bodhisattva Inquiring of Great Skillful Means, translated into Chinese by the ancient monk Dharmarakṣa. But hey, don't let the ancient title fool you, because the ideas inside are as provocative today as they were over a millennium ago.
The absolute key to unpacking this is a concept called skillful means, or Upāya. Basically, the sutra makes this bold argument that rigid adherence to moral rules is actually less holy than radical compassion. In other words, if your ultimate pure intention is to save others from suffering, strict moral commandments can, and absolutely should, be broken. It's a philosophy that literally flips standard morality entirely on its head.
You see, this text sets up a massive ideological split. On one side, you've got the rule-bound path. These are practitioners locked into 250 strict rules just to protect their own purity and avoid sinning. But then, on the other side, you have the compassion-driven bodhisattva path. These are individuals who will willingly shatter those very same rules if it means sacrificing themselves for the greater good of others.
Section 1. The Paradox of Purity. Breaking vows for the greater good.
To really hammer this point home, the text gives us these incredibly vivid stories of holy figures committing what society would consider grave sins. Take the ascetic Yan Guang. He maintained strict purity for an astonishing 4.2 million years. Talk about an unbeatable streak, right? But then, a potter's daughter falls deeply in love with him. When he rejects her to maintain his purity, she threatens to harm herself. Suddenly, Yan Guang's multi-million-year vow is put to the ultimate test.
Faced with this impossible dilemma, Yan Guang makes a stunning calculation. He knows full well that breaking his vow means damnation, but to him, letting an innocent person suffer just so he can keep his perfect record is fundamentally selfish. He willingly accepts hell to save her. But the wild twist in the text is that this act of radical, selfless compassion doesn't send him to hell at all. It actually sends him straight to a higher Brahma heaven.
Section 2. The Captain's Ultimate Sacrifice, an Ancient Trolley Problem.
Now, this next story tackles the ultimate taboo, murder. Imagine a compassionate sea captain who discovers a thief on his ship, plotting to kill all 500 merchants on board. He faces a horrific choice. He looks at option A, do nothing. The merchants die, the thief goes to the lowest hell for committing 500 murders, but hey, the captain stays pure. Then he looks at option B, kill the thief. The merchants live, the thief is spared the absolute worst karmic fate, but the captain becomes a murderer and must go to hell. So what does he do? The captain makes the impossible choice. He decides to take the ultimate karmic bullet. He chooses to commit murder to save 501 souls, the 500 merchants, plus the thief, from his own terrible future karma. He accepts 100,000 kalpas in hell out of pure, unadulterated compassion.
But wait, just like with our ascetic earlier, the sutra delivers a massive plot twist here. Yet again, because the captain's intention was pure, selfless, skillful means, he bypasses hell entirely. The text explicitly states he is immediately reborn in the 12th heaven. Think about that. The act of murder, normally a one-way ticket to hell, became a vehicle for divine ascension, simply because the intention behind it was entirely for the benefit of others.
Section 3. The Buddha's Illusionary Flaws.
All right, now the text takes this exact ethical framework and applies it to the historical Buddha himself. Back then, ordinary people totally believed the Buddha suffered severe karmic punishments for past sins. People thought, for instance, that because the Buddha, in a past life, was that very sea captain who killed the thief, he still had to suffer some residual bad karma. You know, like getting his foot pierced by an iron nail, or being forced to eat horse feed for 3 whole months, or suffering blinding headaches. But here is the ultimate twist. The sutra reveals that the Buddha is actually absolutely flawless. He carries no bad karma whatsoever. Every single hardship, every pain he seemingly endured was an intentional illusion. It was literally a perfectly choreographed stage play designed for a very specific audience.
Here's how it plays out. First, the Buddha acts out a severe karmic punishment, using his own body as a psychological teaching tool. Then, ordinary people see these horrific consequences and are utterly terrified. And finally, realizing that even the Buddha can't escape karma, the masses are frightened into abandoning sin and living moral lives.
A perfect example of this is the iron nail illusion. When an iron nail seemingly pierced the Buddha's foot, the text notes that even his most magically powerful disciple, Modgalyawana, couldn't pull it out. It was completely immovable. This brilliantly illustrated to the watching masses that the weight of past karma is absolute and inescapable. But in reality, the Buddha was completely unharmed. He just materialized the nail out of thin air to teach a crucial lesson.
The text beautifully wraps up this idea by comparing the Buddha to a master physician. Think of a doctor dealing with really stubborn patients who refuse to take their medicine. That doctor might pretend to be sick themselves or show a dramatic example just to convince the patients to take the cure. The Buddha's quote-unquote sins and punishments are really just the medicine he uses to heal the world.
It is just truly fascinating how this ancient text, which, by the way, was digitized and preserved by the amazing folks at the CBETA Foundation, uses such extreme narratives to completely deconstruct our basic assumptions about right and wrong. It strips away all the black and white rules and forces us to look exclusively at the intent behind an action.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final provocative thought. We've seen ascetics break ancient vows and captains commit outright murder, all celebrated because their hearts were completely focused on saving others. So I have to ask you, if the intention is genuinely, entirely pure, is any action truly a sin? Think about how that might apply to the rigid rules we live by in our modern world. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.